Okay, good morning to the media in the room. I want to say good morning to Omaha as well. The purpose of this press conference is to give a detailed accounting of the officer-involved shooting that took place on Saturday, September 28th, near 31st and Taylor Street. Before I start, I do want to publicly give my condolences to the family of Mr. Steven Phipps, Jr. Prior to this press conference at 10 o'clock, some of my commanders and I met with the family. I can safely say, after showing them the body-worn camera footage, that it was the most emotional meeting that I've had in my office in 12 years. And I understand it. They're obviously devastated. Meeting with families because a loss of life occurred involving the police should never become the norm in our society. Anytime the branch of government in place to protect society has a role in the death of a citizen, a full accounting must take place. The Omaha Police Department is diligent and detailed in the aftermath of every officer-involved shooting, as we understand the severity of the situation. The order of this press conference will be as follows. We will put on a video presentation, and then I will give findings by the chief in a macro analysis. There will be a statement by the mayor. We will go to question and answer for the media, and then I will have a closing. At this point in time, let's cue the video presentation.
Hello, my name is Lieutenant Neil Bonacci with the Omaha Police Department's Public Information Office. The information you are about to receive is intended to provide details, as we currently understand them, of an officer-involved shooting that occurred on Saturday, September 28th, 2024, near North 31st Avenue in Taylor Street. This presentation may contain graphic images which could be disturbing to some people. Viewer discretion is advised. On Saturday, September 28th, 2024, at 5:45 p.m., Omaha Police Department uniformed patrol officers Noah Zendejas and Alex Atkinson conducted a traffic stop of a silver Chevrolet Monte Carlo in the area of North 31st Avenue and Taylor Street. The officers were driving a marked Omaha Police cruiser equipped with emergency lights and sirens, and who were both wearing Omaha Police Department uniforms. The driver of the Monte Carlo stopped their car in a vacant lot directly west of the Omaha Police Department Northeast Precinct. The driver of the Monte Carlo, later identified as Steven L. Phipps, Jr., 22 years of age, of Omaha, immediately got out of the Monte Carlo and stood near the open driver's door. Officer Zendejas gave 3 loud verbal commands for Mr. Phipps to stay in the car. Officer Atkinson gave an additional loud verbal command. Mr. Phipps ignored the verbal commands given by the officers and ran south from the location of the traffic stop. Both officers ran after Mr. Phipps. During the short foot pursuit, Officer Zendejas gave 3 loud verbal commands for Mr. Phipps to stop, which Mr. Phipps continued to ignore. Mr. Phipps can be seen on Officer Zendejas's body-worn camera holding a black semi-automatic pistol in his right hand as he jumps over a chain-link fence on the northern border of the Metro's North Omaha Transit Center property. Officer Zendejas then fired 8 shots from his service weapon, striking Mr. Phipps. Officer Zendejas then climbed over the fence and immediately provided medical attention to Mr. Phipps. Additional officers arrived on scene and took over medical care for Mr. Phipps. Mr. Phipps was taken to the University of Nebraska Medical Center, where he later died. Officer Atkinson did not fire his weapon during this encounter. The following video was obtained from the Metro's North Omaha Transit Center. Body-worn cameras are used by all officers up to lieutenants assigned to the Uniform Patrol Bureau and various specialized units. Per OPD policy, officers shall wear the body-worn camera in accordance with OPD training and shall not wear the body-worn camera in a manner that hinders the operation and recording capability of the camera. Cameras are worn on the torso and capture the view of the line of sight from that perspective. It is important to note that the camera lens is fixed and does not capture everything seen or experienced by the officer. When activated, both audio and video turn on with 30 seconds of video data prior to activation. Audio is not recorded during that 30-second period. This feature is designed to capture incidents that happen suddenly where an officer doesn't immediately activate the camera. The following audio clip of this incident was captured by officers in Dehas's body-worn camera.
Hey, stay in the car, bro. Stay in the car. Hey, what are you doing? Stay in the car. What are you doing? Where's the transit center? Steven, stop! Steven, stop! Steven, stop! Okay. Shot fired. Shot fired.
The following images were obtained from officers in Dehas's body-worn camera. This photo shows Mr. Phipps standing near the open driver's side door of his car, where he ignored the verbal commands of the officers to return to the inside of the car. These next photos show Mr. Phipps ignoring the commands of the officers as he began to run from the traffic stop. Of note is Mr. Phipps clutching his waistband area with his left hand. These photos show Mr. Phipps running south through the lot from the traffic stop. Mr. Phipps's hands are not visible. This photo shows the cell phone, which appears to have been dropped by Mr. Phipps during the foot pursuit. This photo shows Mr. Phipps approaching the chain link fence on the north side of the North Omaha Transit Center. Mr. Phipps' hands are still not visible. This photo shows Mr. Phipps climbing over the chain link fence. The next series of photos show Mr. Phipps going over the chain link fence with a firearm in his right hand. The last photo shows officers in Dehas performing CPR on Mr. Phipps. The Omaha Police Department officer-involved investigations team, assisted by the Nebraska State Patrol and Douglas County Sheriff's Office, was activated to conduct an investigation into this incident. Investigators at the crime scene retrieved the following pieces of evidence: a dark gray iPhone located along the path of the foot pursuit discarded by Mr. Phipps as he ran from the traffic stop. A black Smith & Wesson M&P 5.7 handgun was located in the grass near the chain link fence where the incident took place. The firearm was loaded with 15 live rounds in the magazine and 1 in the chamber. A subsequent search of Mr. Phipps' Chevrolet Monte Carlo found the following items of evidence: a silver and black Smith & Wesson 5.7 by 28 millimeter firearm magazine containing 22 live rounds, 1 live round of 5.7 by 28 millimeter ammunition from the rear driver's side floor of the car, car registration identifying Steven Phipps Jr. as the owner of the stopped Chevrolet Monte Carlo. A post-mortem examination was completed for Mr. Phipps on Monday, September 30th, 2024. Mr. Phipps' cause of death was determined to be from injuries received from gunshots, with the fatal round entering Mr. Phipps' right shoulder and traveling downward through his chest, coming to rest in his stomach. The Omaha Police Department officer-involved investigations team interviewed both officers in Dehas and Atkinson regarding their actions during this incident. Both officers provided voluntary statements to investigators. Both officers did not view their body-worn camera footage prior to their interviews. Officers in Dehas told investigators that once Mr. Phipps exited his car, he noted the outline of a handgun in the front pocket of Mr. Phipps' hoodie. Officers in Dehas stated that during the foot pursuit, he saw Mr. Phipps remove a handgun from the front of his body. Officers in Dehas noted the gun was in Mr. Phipps' right hand, and as Mr. Phipps went over the top of the fence, the gun was pointed towards the officers, which created an imminent threat. The officers in Dehas' statements were consistent with the body-worn camera footage and the physical evidence located at the scene. Officer Atkinson's statements were also consistent with his body-worn camera footage and the physical evidence located at the scene. Investigators conducted a background check of Mr. Phipps, which showed previous arrests for the following: flight to avoid arrest, marijuana manufacture and delivery, carrying a concealed weapon, resisting arrest on 2 separate occasions, failure to disclose a concealed weapon on 2 separate occasions, unlawful transport of a firearm. Officer Noah Zendejas has been employed with the Omaha Police Department for 3.5 years and is assigned to the Uniform Patrol Bureau in the Northeast Precinct. A review of Officer Zendejas's disciplinary history showed no previous discipline for use of force policy violations. Officer Alex Atkinson has been employed with the Omaha Police Department for just under 5 years and is assigned to the Uniform Patrol Bureau in the Northeast Precinct. A review of Officer Atkinson's disciplinary history showed no previous discipline for use of force policy violations. At the conclusion of the interviews of Officers Zendejas and Atkinson, the Douglas County Attorney's Office was provided a full briefing on the details of the incident with the facts known at this time. This incident is the subject of a criminal investigation to be reviewed by the Douglas County Attorney's Office and is also the subject of an internal administrative investigation. Per Nebraska State Statute, 2 outside agencies assisted with this investigation, consisting of investigators from the Nebraska State Patrol and the Douglas County Sheriff's Office. Conclusions about whether the actions of the officer are consistent with department policy and the law will not be made until all facts are known and the investigation is complete. Per Nebraska State Statute, a grand jury will be convened to review this incident. This video was intended to inform and educate the public about a critical incident in our community. The Omaha Police Department, in partnership with our community, provides impartial, ethical, and professional law enforcement services and protection. We strive to maintain the trust and confidence of our citizens while working to improve the quality of life.
We give you a few moments to reorientate your cameras. The reason for the traffic stop was for expired plates. A grand jury will be convened to determine the legal findings and whether or not the officer-involved shooting conforms to the law. Please let me remind everyone the prescribed manner for body-worn camera footage to be released is after the grand jury, and the Omaha Police Department complies with the intent of the grand jury law. I must make a determination if the officer-involved shooting is within the use of force policy of the Omaha Police Department. While all involved wish this incident did not happen, at this point in time it is within the policies and procedures of the Omaha Police Department. I want to do a macro analysis of officer-involved shootings. There is going to be 4 slides that I will talk through. It's up to you how you want to orientate your cameras. I'll give you a moment though. This first slide is officer-involved shootings from 2010 to 2024 for the Omaha Police Department. Non-fatals are in yellow, fatal is in red. Our highs were 2010, 2011, and as a command staff in 2012, we made a concerted effort to lower the number of officer-involved shootings that we had in our city. We increased our training, we provided less lethal options, and we increased the accountability. In 2022, I started to become concerned because of some national trend data. Go to slide 2. This is the national number of officer-involved shooting fatalities. You see the trend line. This is the highest number on record is 2023. My concern was the increase nationally in officer-involved shootings at its all-time high, even after the policing reform measures that took place after Ferguson, Missouri in 2015, and after the George Floyd movement in 2020. The numbers were still on the rise. We did some deep analysis. We've been watching this for about 10 years. And the correlation between the rise in officer-involved shootings nationally correlates exactly, almost identically, to the axis line of the number of guns seized nationally. So as guns have been increased and they're seized and the amount of guns on our streets continues and the amount of guns that our officers have contact with across this country, nationally, officer-involved shootings have gone up in tandem. Slide number 3 is Omaha Police Department gun seizures. As you can see, in 2023, we were at an all-time high as well. So in 2022, my concern was, will Omaha start to catch up to the national narrative? Will our officer-involved shootings start to go in tandem with the number of guns on the street? And as you can see, in 2023 and 2024, they have spiked up. Slide number 4 is officer-involved shootings in Omaha versus gun seizures. The yellow line is the way we are completely divergent. Most of the time, many, many years, Omaha has been opposite of the national narrative. The only time that we've been in accordance with the narrative is 2016, 2023, 2024. But obviously, I talk about my concern about the number of guns on the street. This subject is something we've studied for a long time. So much so that I received permission several years ago to author a book as it relates to law enforcement leadership and trying to advance our profession across this community and across the country. As a 12-year plus chief, I worked in collaboration with the University of Nebraska Omaha. Officer-involved shootings encompasses an entire chapter in that book. Which has not been released as of yet to the public, but it will be. The number of officers killed in the line of duty is also at a high pace. There are a lot of guns on our streets. And what I'm going to plead next applies to legal gun owners and illegal gun possessors alike. If you come into contact with law enforcement and you have a gun, I plead with you to comply with the officer's directions. I cannot and I will never diminish an officer's ability to protect themselves. It is a dangerous job with a lot of variables. Within the Omaha Police Department, we try to control the variables through training, less lethal options, and accountability. Externally, we can minimize variables when compliance simply takes place. We have tremendous community partners. I want to work with them on this. Together, we've been opposite of the national trend lines for so long. And I want to go back to that. I'm going to turn this over to the mayor to get from a statement by the mayor of Omaha. This is Gene Stoppett.
Thank you, Chief. First of all, I do send my condolences to Mr. Phipps' family. Loss of life is never a expected or desired result, especially of a traffic stop, and so my thoughts and prayers are with them and their entire family today. I would also like to thank Omaha Police Department's investigative team. I was thoroughly briefed yesterday, and I'm always impressed and very grateful for their thoroughness and how clear they are and transparent they are with these investigations, as they should be. Their accuracy, their accountability, their thoroughness, their attention to detail is just what we would expect, and they do an absolutely incredible job. Many thanks to Captain Jeremy Christensen, who led this investigation, did a great job. I do have confidence in the investigative process. Chief Schmatter has really earned the community's trust by making very, very thoughtful and appropriate decisions after incidents like this, and this one will be no different. Our community can be certain that the Omaha Police Department will always maintain the highest level of accountability.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to go to question and answer. I have some ground rules, please, for the media. A microphone will be walked over to you as I want the public to hear your questions. Sometimes the feedback as I get is they can't hear your questions. Prior to answering the question, I need you to state your name and the media affiliation that you are with prior to your question. I'm going to start out with the first one here today, which was Melissa from KMTV. Do you have a question?
We're together, so she'll ask. Hi, Chief. Jill Lampkins with
Hello.
KMTV. Chief Jill Lampkins with KMTV.
Hi,
My
Jill.
question for you is, we saw the footage from the Metro Transit Station,
Right.
and I wanted to ask if there was a standard, or when officers do have to defend themselves, is there a standard for how they should go about that?
There is. Our use of force policy for deadly force is if there's a threat of serious bodily injury or death, and to defend the life of another, to defend the life of the officer, they are authorized to utilize deadly force. When Officer Zendejas was chasing Mr. Phipps, through his training, he was cueing in right from the start. Why is he getting out of the vehicle? That's abnormal. I could see the trace of something heavy in his hoodie. I could see something in his left hand. I could see him clutching his side. He's cueing in this entire time, and he talks about that in his interview. He sees the gun come out when Mr. Phipps elects to climb the fence. Doesn't discard it. He climbs the fence with the gun. As he's falling, Officer Zendejas notes that at one point he's almost facing him, and the gun starts to become pointed at him. And that's when he discharges his firearm. That would be within the confines of our use of force policy. At that point in time, he felt his life was in danger. Perhaps his partner's life was in danger as well. Thank you. We'll go to Brian Mastery with WWT, please.
Hi, Chief.
Good afternoon.
My question is on when you saw the body cam footage in its entirety.
I did.
I noticed how hard that fence was to climb over for the officers. I only saw a still of it, but can you walk me through what you saw? Because the still I saw looked like he just might have been falling down like the others did when they jumped over it.
Sure. I mean, I think that's entirely possible that he's just fallen over the fence. But one has to ask yourself, if you're in the mind of that officer chasing, why did you just take that gun out of your pocket? Why not throw it? It happens all the time when we chase subjects. They'll throw the gun. So that officer's obviously cued into the fact, why do you still have that gun? Why do you need it to get over that fence? That officer also knows there's a populated metro area transit on that other side. So those are cues that officer has to take into consideration. And I get the genesis of your question is we really don't know what Mr. Phipps' intent was. But when that gun started to be pointed to him and he had it in his hand, that officer's authorized at that point to defend himself. Thank you. I'm going to go to Molly Ashford with the Omaha World Herald.
Thank you. Molly Ashford, Omaha World Herald. How many times was Phipps shot?
He was shot 8 times, all in the front area. There was a lot of talk early on that maybe he was shot in the back. He was not. And we did show representatives of the family an autopsy photo of his back to confirm that.
And was he shot when he was kind of in the air coming down above the fence, or once he was on the ground?
It started when he was coming down,
And then continued once
and
he was...
then it ended when he hit the ground.
Okay. Did he possess the gun legally?
This should be your last question. You did a great job of sliding in 3 questions on me.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you.
He was a legal possessor of that gun. Had he remained in the car and the officers went up to the window and he declared that he had a firearm, no crime has been committed here. He would have been issued a ticket for expired plates. Okay, I'm going to go to KETV.
Thanks for your time, Chief. Alex McClune, KETV. This is the second time in a month one of your officers has shot and killed a black man. Yes, they were both armed, but in the interest of race relations from a police department, how do you answer to that?
Look, I mean, obviously, I don't like it, Alex. This is a very tough time for Omaha and our community. I look back on my career, and I only one other tough time I can think of that even equates to this moment in history, and that is when we spent months catching serial killer Anthony Garcia, and no sooner than a week or so later, we have to turn around and double down on another serial killer, Nico Jenkins. Tough time for us. This is a tough time for the city on another front because law enforcement is involved in the loss of life of 2 of our citizens. I take that extremely serious. I take police community relations as our lifeblood. And we are committed to our community to put this back into a stabilized form. Right now it's very destabilized, understandably. So that's how I answer that question. I noticed you're here with your coworker Jessica from KETV. Would you like a question, Jessica?
It's kind of a double question, but it concerns training. Again, Jessica Perez with KUTV. The first part of the question is, how are officers trained to respond when they see a gun? Is it immediately shoot? And the second part of the question is, does the Omaha Police Department do any non-bias training as they go through the academy?
Absolutely. Let me take the second question first. The Omaha Police Department is committed to the bias training for non-bias. We are committed to cultural competency. We are committed to diversity within the Omaha Police Department because I think that helps with the culture and also various perspectives, and also a diverse roll call helps officers learn how to police various members of our community that happen to be diverse. So that's the answer to the second question. The first question is, our training and when to shoot and not shoot is voluminous. It's what we do all the time when you first get hired. It's also oftentimes what weeds candidates out because they can't function within those split-second moments. It's something we train on every year, the ongoing officers, even after they're out of the academy. To answer specifically your question, it's just going to depend on the circumstances. Seeing a gun that's not a threat will require a different response from the officer than when there's a gun in someone's hand and then you perceive a threat at that point. You do have the authority and the option to defend your life. And as a society, that shouldn't be hard to understand. These officers have a right to go home. They're out there trying to reduce crime in our community. And quite frankly, doing an amazing job with it. They're confronted with a lot of danger every night. Chief Gray and I were talking. We came on together 28 years ago. We rode together for a little bit. We would get one gun a month. It's every night these officers are taking guns off the street. Every single night. Numerous times. The dynamics of policing have vastly changed in this country. It's changed in Nebraska. They are coming into contact with firearms all the time. Concern of mine. Concern of mine, just like I showed you during the slideshow. Okay, next question.
Can I add a comment
Sure.
here? I want just to add a comment when Alex McClune mentioned these 2 incidences we had in a relatively short period of time, officer-involved shooting. I do want to take the time to really continue to reassure the citizens of Omaha, though, is thanks to the Omaha Police Department and their great work, we do have a safe city. We can't take 2 isolated incidences and say, our city is now unsafe. Last year we had 29 homicides for the entire year and 100% clearance. This year right now it's October, 1st of October, and we've had 14. It's 14 too many, it's 29 too many last year, but you compare to some of our counterparts, for example, Kansas City, they had over 170 last year, and their clearance rate wasn't near what we have. So we still have and our number of shootings are at an all-time low. So we still have a very safe city, and I want to really reassure the citizens of Omaha that. Our police department, as everybody knows, there are about 100 officers down right now. And that is a nationwide trend, and it's something we're doing everything we can to address that issue, just like every police department and every mayor in the country is trying to do right now. But just think, 100 down, and we still have these amazing safe city statistics. And I think that's something that this incident, of course, we are concerned. It will be investigated very thoroughly, clearly, transparently. But I want to reassure people, we still have a very, very safe city, and we intend to keep it that way.
Hi, Chief. Jill Lampkins, KMTD. I wanted to ask you, it struck me that you said that meeting with the family was the most emotional you've been a part of in the past 12 years. Is there anything you could share with us from that meeting?
No, I wanted to make that macro statement. It's important that the confines of what takes place in those meetings is confidential from our side of things. If the family wants to talk about it or the representatives, they can do so, but we won't, because we called a private meeting for them.
Right, Master WWT. This is the first time we've had a chance to talk to you since the last officer shooting. Recently, in that one, it was a SWAT team member felt he was being charged, felt officers' lives were in danger and fired. You later determined that he should be fired. Can you explain what the policies, procedures, or training that he violated? I know you said there was no criminal intent, but it was an internal policy violation.
So, you know, I've been on record quite a bit on both of these officer-involved shootings. Not only have I been in front of the media, but I've been in front of communities numerous times. It's pretty much encompassed my workload this last month. And the internal affairs investigation, and this is the last question I'm going to take on this particular subject because that's not why we're here today. At the conclusion of our internal affairs investigation, it was determined that Officer Vail violated our use of force policy. And I recommended his termination as such. That's all I'm going to say on that. There are, Brian, not to be, and I'm not cutting you off to be short, but I have collective bargaining agreements, I have personnel rules and laws. I just can't get into the confines of what we found and how that unfolded. And that's just a legality matter.
Molly Ashford, World Herald. I have one more. Is there a policy that dictates when officers should chase a suspect who's fleeing from a traffic stop? And if so, did the officers follow that policy?
So one thing to realize is those officers are down there, they're working in all parts of our city trying to reduce violent crime. And when somebody runs from a law enforcement officer, they're trained to go after them. We're attempting to reduce crime. The minute I say as chief, we're no longer going to go after law violators is the minute crime starts going up. If you want to make the correlation to the defund the police movement, where you take officers away and you don't have police, look at the crime that skyrocketed in all those cities. So if the solution proposed to me is no, we won't chase anybody that runs, that's an uneducated solution, and you have unintended consequences that will affect the paradigm of policing and crime in this country. Somebody ran from this law enforcement officer. The officer, as charged by this community, gave chase.
Alex McClune, KETV. Did you identify the passenger in the car with Mr. Phipps, and what is their involvement with this investigation?
We did identify the passenger and does not have any tangible involvement in this matter.
Okay. And I want to make sure I understand, please correct me if I'm wrong, but did Mr. Phipps drop his gun and also 8 gunshots from an officer? Is that excessive? Is that a violation of any department rules?
What do you mean, did he drop his gun?
The gun was laying in the grass, he was climbing over a fence, so please correct me if I'm wrong, but he lost
Sure, I mean,
control of the gun.
At some point, he did lose control of the gun. You know, Alex, he was being shot. I mean, it's not unnatural to drop the gun at that point in time if you feel the impact of a round. What was your second question?
8 gunshots from one officer through a fence like that, is that?
It's not abnormal at all. It's not abnormal at all because those 8 gunshots came out in the course of less than 3 seconds. Okay? So when we train to shoot until they feel the threat is done. And oftentimes you will have that. Okay? And it's not like in the movies. It really isn't. The use of force when we see it live and in real life, not choreographed, scene by scene, slice by slice. I've yet to see one that looks good. I've yet to see one that isn't shocking, because it is. You're witnessing somebody in real time, in a real life manner, get killed. There's no TV, there's no makeup, there's no retakes. It's raw. And I'm not alarmed by the volume of shots. It's oftentimes in accordance to our training, and it looks like it is here as well.
With KTV. Going back to community trust, Chief Stothert, you talked about how the chief has trust in the community. You know, with these incidents that have happened, one a month ago, now this one, there does seem to be a distrust among the Black community, and even from the incident earlier this year among the Latino community. So how do you build bridges to make sure people trust you and feel safe interacting with police and don't run during a traffic stop?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Re-entrench with our community partners. We'll be at a community meeting at 2 o'clock here today. My command staff will be there. We interface with the community. We try to double down it on the aftermath. It's very important when you have a city the size of Omaha. We have a 1.1 million population here in our metro area. It's going to be a population certainty that things will happen. Okay, look at all the guns that we've taken off the street. There's a population certainty that says things are going to happen. It doesn't mean we throw everything away and abandon police community relations. I know for a fact that we won't, and I know for a fact our community partners won't. But that doesn't mean there isn't going to be rough times. I've seen rough times in every relationship around. In the communities and the police departments is. But what's different about Omaha is both of us want to be in this relationship. Go to a lot of other cities, one side or the other doesn't want to be. And that's a worse problem to have. So we're going to spend a lot of time committing ourselves to re-entrenching those police community relations at a strong level, because that's what got Omaha to be a model city in this country. Thank you, great question. I'll take one more question if you have any.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Absolutely.
Are you going to be doing anything additional to try to connect with these communities?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But for starters, we'll be at the 2 o'clock. You'd be surprised at how many meetings I've attended in the last month or so. How often my phone has rang, how often I've reached out to community members, how often they've reached out to me. It's an ongoing thing. It's a garden. We're constantly making sure that garden is tended to. And it's a priority of ours, so you will see quite a few. Thank you for that question.
Earlier, Chief, you made a point to talk about the correlation between the number of guns officers are seizing and the number of shootings then that result of that. I know you said you wrote a chapter in your forthcoming book on the dynamics of guns. I think people watching this might be wondering, what are solutions, not only for you, but the community?
Absolutely. Great question, Brian. The solution to lowering the number of these officer-involved shootings realizing the platform that we have with increased guns in society is twofold. There's two silos. First is the silo within the Omaha Police Department. We have to make sure our training is the best of the best, and I'm confident it is. We have to make sure we have strong accountability and a culture. We also have to make sure that the officers have a less lethal option when it's available. This was not a less lethal option. This was not a taser situation. When somebody has a gun, they are trained not to have to use their taser. It's an unnecessary risk to that officer at that point in time. So that's the first silo. The second silo is police and community relationships. If you look across the country, it's a strange correlation, but communities that get along with the police and the police get along with the community tend to have lesser number of officer-involved shootings. Omaha has really been a model on this front for so long. If you want to put up the number 4 slide, you can see the divergent lines we've had the majority of the time of the years. What I ask from the community as we work through police-community relations, I do think a secondary piece, that second silo, needs to come with compliance. I know there's an entrenched fear of the police, totally understandable. Totally understandable given the history of policing in the country and current disproportionate statistics. I get the fact that they're scared, but if we can get the message out that the worst thing that you could do is be non-compliant when you have a gun dealing with law enforcement officers, that's a message that I want to work with the community, in addition to working with driving crime down in our community. There's a lot of layers to policing. It's very complex. Crime will go up if we don't continue to do what we need to do to address crime with our community. All three of those things can be done, and Omaha did them for many, 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 many years. And in 2022, I started to become concerned just the number of guns on the streets in this country, the number of guns on the streets in Omaha. It becomes at some point an odds game, Brian. How can you have this many encounters with citizens with guns? And if you look at the number of guns we seized in 2023, 1,468. It's a lot of contact with somebody with a firearm. All right, I'm going to close by saying there is no greater destabilizer to police and community relations than an officer-involved shooting. In Omaha, we have come too far in partnership with our community. Homicides and shootings are near our all-time lows. This is police and community partnership at its finest. As we move forward, let's be mindful and intentional so that Omaha does not follow the national trend of rising officer-involved shootings because of a high number of guns on the streets. Only through a partnership with our community can we make it happen. Thank you, and I would like Omaha to have a good day.